Now, the second world is a very important lens because it's essentially what people call emerging markets and then some. If there's 20 to 30 emerging markets, I deal with about 40 or so countries, and I believe the second world actually spans a much larger set than that, and it could be considered 70 or 80 countries. The definition of first world, if we take just the OECD, that's about 30 countries. If you say third world or the World Bank's LDCs, least developed countries, that's another 50 or so. That still leaves you with about 100 or so countries that are trapped in between or caught in between. And that's where the term second world comes from. It used to mean something completely different, of course, and many of you remember that it referred to the socialist bloc, Warsaw Pact countries, and Soviet Union. But as of about 1993, 1994, pretty much everyone stopped using that term, but we still say first world, we still say third world. What occurred to me is that in the globalization age, we find that many countries are being split in half internally, winners and losers, haves and have-nots, along cultural, political, economic lines. And so the term second world seemed useful to me as not countries that are stuck in third world poverty or backwardness or have arrived at first world modernity and development, but are really both at the same time, not halfway, but both. And when you hear people talking about the shrinking middle class in the world and this sort of narrow middle, a world of wealth in Europe and the transatlantic area, but great poverty everywhere else. Well, that's that stratification that we're talking about. It happens not just across countries, but within them, and it's very stark in these second world countries. For everyone who's been to a place where the capital city is seems developed and refined and has internet access and nice hotels, but then the rest of the country doesn't seem to have any roads. Well, that's what I mean by the second world, and the concept becomes very crisp the more you travel through these different regions. But the other main characteristic is not necessarily ideological as it was during the Cold War, but certainly strategic. Countries that have strategic geography, important location in key regions like Eastern Europe, Central Asia, South America, the Middle East, Southeast Asia. The places where I found that, again, America, Europe, and China are competing the most for access to these countries' resources, their wealth. These are, again, the emerging markets that have accrued massive currency reserves or start launching sovereign wealth funds, all sorts of ways in which they're becoming strategically influential. But at this point, we're not appreciating them. We're not thinking about how they view the world from the inside out, and therefore our foreign policy stands on very shaky ground. To bring the two together, to think about second world countries not only in globalization terms, to view their inner struggle to sort of to succeed, to develop, but also their strategic struggle to balance the great powers, causes a deep understanding of their instability, of the uncertainty. And no matter how much time I spent in various countries, whether it's Turkey or Kazakhstan or Venezuela or Libya or Indonesia, the ones that I know very well, the ones that I maybe know a bit more superficially, one thing's for sure, I can't really say with any certainty that 5 years from now, that country will have made it, or into the first world, it will have succeeded, or it will have collapsed, into the third world. A coup will have taken place, there will have been a revolution of some kind. One never knows, and that's one of the very striking things about traveling and spending time in the second world. The more you know, the more you don't know, the more you're confused about, again, this complexity. What impact is geopolitics or is globalization going to have on these countries?